Hello and welcome back to the other side of the cell. This is Michael Jackson coming to you again. Um, we're going to title this one Breaking Barriers, an unlikely bond between a black staff person and a white inmate. Basically, the reason I titled this is Breaking Barriers is because a lot of times we tend to think of um, things along racial lines and different things like that, but actually when it all breaks down we all um, look at things, we're all human beings. So to go back, this happened probably around 2001. um, I was new to corrections, didn't understand a lot, but once I got my feet on the ground and watched how things operated in a particular prison that I worked, we discovered in prison that things break down amongst racial lines pretty significantly. And it's actually exaggerated a lot by inmates grouping themselves together along racial lines. And that's typical in most prisons. Um, and the prison where I worked, um, it was a predominantly white prison population. Uh, it was around 80-20, so about 80% white inmates, 20% black inmates. Um, and at that time, when I was hired in to the facility, I was only one of two black employees. So you had staffing was like in the 99 percentile of white staff members, and then there was me and a receptionist switchboard operator who was the other uh, person. But if you look at me going into that situation, it's kind of unique um, as far as just the lay of the land and the way things were. So during my initial time there, I've met a lot of different inmates. In my facility, inmates would actually talk to you, and it's not like it is in some facilities where inmates don't communicate with staff at all. In my facility, inmates and staff had small talk, dialogue about sports or general conversations. You're always taught in corrections not to have personal conversations with inmates just because that's just not a good thing. But anyway, there's a particular inmate I got to know, um, and over the course of my 26 years in corrections, I've met thousands of inmates. I've, black, white, Iranian, Chinese, Asian. There's just been a lot. But this particular inmate was a big white guy. He was about 6'6". Oh, he's probably anywhere from 250 to 260, and they called him Big Country. And during my time in corrections, I've met several guys with the nickname Big Country. But this particular guy was a big, massive human being. And he was in prison, incarcerated for murder. And he had killed his best friend. It was over, I'm pretty sure if I remember correctly, they were drunk, drinking moonshine, and it was an accident, and it just happened, and he was doing a life with mercy sentence. So during the course of me getting to know my unit, there's 3 dorms on my unit, um, and he lived on a particular dorm where it was mostly white inmates on that dorm. The ratio was like, if it was 45, a 44-man dorm, it was probably about 38-6 uh, whites to black on that dorm, and he was one of the dominant players on that dorm. He basically ran that dorm because the prison strength and power rule, and that's just the way it is. And So getting to know him, he would never really engage in conversation with me. Never would really acknowledge or speak to me because he was a uh, very racist person. He was from a very rural community where he lived back in the holler. And anybody that doesn't know what a holler is, it's like in rural communities they have these. Um, you can't call them neighborhoods, but they're like a neighborhood where they're way back into the mountains, and there's not very many people who live back there, and the people who live back there are usually related, and they don't see a lot of people. They don't know a lot of other people than the people that they were raised with, or people that they grew up with. So in West Virginia, you have a lot of those hollers, and they go back into the mountains. And usually, a lot of people that live back in there live in trailers or small homes, and they're all related. So if you went back in through there, you would be immediately spotted because you're not one of those their uh, relatives or something. So everybody knows everybody, and that's the kind of environment he grew up with. Really poor. Um, After I got to know him, he explained to me, they had a trailer where the roof leaked. Was real cold in the winter because the heat was bad, and they had a lot of leakages around the windows. So he grew up really poor. Food stamps. They hunted and got deer meat and different wild game, and that's what they ate off of, put in the freezer and stuff like that. So he and I came from two different worlds, two different planets. Um, but I had some similarities with him just because I did grow up in a small rural community, and so I understood him in a way. But anyway, as I would interact with those dormitories, he was just one of those guys that was very distant. He was very quiet, never spoke. Uh, Huge man, but he just never was very loud or boisterous, and he didn't engage with me at all. And I figured it out after a while because a couple other inmates told me, he's very prejudiced, hates black people. He's not going to talk to you at all. So I took him for what it was worth. But anyway, there came a time, it was during a holiday. I think it was around right before Christmas, and his one of his family members was sick, and it was his mother. She had gotten real sick, got I believe it was congestive heart failure, and she was in intensive care. So one of his friends had mentioned to me, he said, Country's mom is very sick, and she's in intensive care, and he's afraid she's going to die, and he's really, upset about it. And if one of those guys up on the dorm mouth him off or something, he's going to hurt somebody because, he was capable of, hurting somebody just because of his size and his mass, and he was able to. He come from a fighting family, so keeping that in mind when I'm navigating the dorms and around him. I might speak to him and say, "Hey, how are you doing? Need anything?" And of course, he would never ask me for anything. But anyway, moving along, he had gotten word. Well, let me back up. The hospital, one of his relatives had called from the hospital and said that his mother had taken a turn for the worse and looked like she wasn't going to make it. So I remember it was Christmas Eve, and I was the only person working that day outside of the officers. So I was by myself in my office doing some paperwork, whatnot, and I get a call from the shift commander, who would be the captain. That'd be the guy that's in charge of the whole facility. And he said, he'd let you know that this particular inmate's mother just passed away, and that he needs to try to call home. So I was like, what am I to do with this? Because I was still pretty new at the time, and I didn't really understand. Well, I knew the protocols, but I didn't actually know what to do, because that particular day, there was no chaplains in. And typically, when somebody dies and they're in prison, or a family member dies, and an inmate will go to the chaplain, and the chaplain will handle all the necessary phone calls and try to get a hold of the family member or the hospital, try to verify information so that we can do something on our end to either facilitate a phone call or a visit. Sometimes they'll do a bedside visit, and then sometimes they'll do a funeral visit. Depends on the situation. Sometimes they do a medical visit. Just depends on the case and the circumstance. But anyway, this situation was, there was nobody there. So I call him down. I say, listen, the chaplain's not here. I got some news for you, and it's not going to be good. So I basically told him that, hate to tell you this, but your mother's passed away. And the look on his face was anger, fear, and it was just of a broken man, because he had, through all the time that he was in prison, always talked about trying to make sure that he could get out one day before his mother would pass. And I guess that was the moment where he realized that was not going to happen. So I'm in an office with this guy by myself, and I'm thinking, what if this guy goes nuts and I've got to fight him or whatever? I'm in trouble, because I don't have nobody here to help me. So my instincts kick in, and I've always worked with juveniles, mentally handicapped, and different. That was my background before I got into corrections. So knew immediately I need to engage with him and make sure that I offer him some type of comfort. I haven't in mind now that he's a racist, he hates black people, and I just gave him the worst news of his life. So me trying to process all this in my brain, I'm thinking, I'm the perfect person for him to lash out to. I'm the perfect person for him to get all this stuff he has inside of his heart and take it out on me. So I let him sit there and process, and I said, is there anything I can do for you? He said, you can't do nothing for me. And I said, okay. And then I explained to him there wasn't a chaplain available, and that there was nobody there to get him an emergency phone call or whatever, because when inmates come to prison, they put in a phone list. And the phone list in our facility, they had 10 numbers that they could put on their list, and that's the only 10 numbers they could call. So if nobody was at the numbers that it was on his list, they just couldn't pick up and dial a number. That's not the way it worked, because all that's restricted. So he said, well, I'm just going to go back up on the dorm, and I don't want to talk to nobody. So I said, okay. So I walk him out of my office into the hallway, open the hallway door, and let him walk up to his dorm, because his dorm was located on the second floor of where we were. So I did that, secured door, come back in the office. So I called shift commander and I said, hey, this guy's mom just died. Chaplain's not here. What do we do about that? And at that time, there wasn't a lot of compassion for inmates, and basically they said, chaplain's not here. Nothing to do about it. You'll have to wait till the chaplains get here in a couple of days. And me thinking, what if that was my mom that passed away? What if that was somebody that I loved that was in prison and nobody would help them um, at least get a call home to their family? Because no matter what you think about inmates, no matter what you think about the judicial system, inmates are somebody's loved ones. And you're not there to continue to punish them. You're there to provide security and give them appropriate programs so hopefully they can get out and not come back. So I'm thinking in my mind, if that was my mom that passed away and I was in prison, I would at least like to be able to talk to somebody in my family. So me thinking and processing that, it just bothered me because my mom always raised me to believe that there's good in everybody and that you pray for your enemies and you do all that type of thing. So I call him back down to the office and I say, hey, I understand that, you and I come from different walks of life and you might have some reason to hate me just because you grew up a certain way, but that's not the way I believe life works. And I believe that if you need to talk to somebody, you should be able to talk to somebody. He said, well, I've tried all the numbers and nobody's answering. I said, well, let's see if we can get a hold of the hospital or somebody to at least give you a 10-minute phone call if we can get a hold of somebody. So I get a hold of shift commander, say I need to make an emergency phone call. They grant me that. I call the hospital. And I call the hospital and I say, this is, Mr. Jackson, trying to get a hold of this gentleman's relative because his mom just passed away near your facility. And back then, they didn't have a HIPAA and they didn't really kind of restrict you from knowing certain things. And I said, this is the situation. I'm in a prison. I'm with this person that's passed away. I'm with their son. I'm just trying to get a hold of any type of relative or somebody to be able to give him some type of contact so he can understand what's going on. So basically, I got put on hold 2 or 3 times, and finally it was a nurse that said, I'm going to help you. I think this gentleman out here is related to him. Let me see if I can get this guy to the phone. So she gets this person to the phone, and this happens to be his dad. So I said, explain to him who it was, and I have your son here. He just really would like to talk to you. I can give him his 10 minutes. He said, I really do appreciate that, sir. Can I speak to him? So, we had to put him on speakerphone. He was at my desk. I put him on speakerphone, and I said, listen, you got 10. You got 10 minutes. That's it. He said, okay. So we got to get him on the phone, get it started. And I just felt that, appropriate for me to step to the door. And, our door had a big glass in it. And stepped to the door, stepped on the outside, and let him have a little bit of privacy while he talked to his father. And I let that phone call go for probably about 20 minutes. Because, as I was monitoring the call, I could see all the emotion and the just a guy that was broken. So I let the call go for 20 minutes. Came in, I said, you're going to have to wrap this up. He wraps up the phone call and hangs up. And then he just sits and stares at me. And I said, so, that's the best I can do. How are you feeling or what are you thinking right now? And he said, you know what, Mr. Jackson? He said, I was always brought up to hate black people. I was always brought up and taught that black people were evil and they were animals and they were all these things. And he said, "Did you prove to me that that's bullshit?" And I said, "Well, I wasn't out to prove anything to you. I was just out to do the right thing. And the right thing was to get you a phone call to your family. Because I don't care if you're black, white, green, purple, whatever you are. I don't care what you did to get in prison. I don't care about any of that because, you know, I believe in my heart that everybody's a 30-second decision away from being an inmate or going to prison because you never know in life. You know, your wife may cheat, you might get in a bar fight, you might have a scuffle at a store or something and accidentally kill somebody, or you might uh, have a DUI arrest. So there's multiple decisions that you make in life that you're just that quickly could be in that situation. And for me, I would just like for somebody to have compassion for my son or my relative who's sitting behind bars, to have enough compassion for them to say, you know, I'm gonna help you in this time of need. So, you know, it's like I told him, I said, I hope that this will give you a different light on life because we're all human beings at the end of the day. And hating somebody that you don't know might be the one person that actually helps you in life. And you never know when the person that looks like me or the person that looks like somebody else that you might hate is the person that God sends in your path to just to help you. And if you block that out, you're going to block out a blessing. So, you know, on my journey with him throughout the years, because he was incarcerated for many years, and I knew him for 10, 15 plus years. We had a particular bond that was, he would never let other inmates know that, he thought or he liked me, but he did. We had an unspoken bond because I was the one person that actually cared about him whenever he lost the love of his life, his mother. And I knew how much I loved my mother. And I knew that if my mother died and I was in prison, I would want somebody to help me. So that's kind of where I was with that one. And so throughout the years, whenever I need something on those dorms and or something like that, he would always give me a little head shake and say he's going to take care of it or whatever. I never had any problem out of him. He was always respectful to me, and we built a bond. And after knowing him for a while, I've had the inmates come and say that dude always sticks up for you and says good things about you because we don't know why, but I knew why, just because I treated him like a human being. And in corrections, that's the big thing. If you treat inmates with human dignity and respect, they will respect you. Not all of them, but most of them. But if you go through your career with consistency and you're able to develop relationships, inmates will always respect that because respect is huge in prison. And people that sit back and want to judge people based on circumstances they might not even know. The only thing that you see sometimes in corrections is the guys that cycle back through. There's a lot of guys that get out and are able to change their lives. And for me, if I can affect a guy in a certain way and change how he thinks about prejudice or anything like that and make him think a little differently than I've done what I'm supposed to do. But those things are hard to crack inside that institution because inmates have to put up a barrier and staff do too. So human connection is hard, but it's possible. So, the moral of this story is never ever prejudge people on prejudice or stereotypes, because you never know if that might be the one person God sends in your path to change your life. And I want to thank everybody for supporting this channel. I would like for you to subscribe, like and share if you feel it in your heart to do so. This channel is growing at a rapid pace, and I'm very, very thankful for everybody that's supporting me and letting me know that this is helpful to them. So until next time, I'll see you on the other side.